So I'll get started. Before I get going, a quick word on what audioboom does as a company. We are one of the world's largest spoken word audio platforms with a focus on hosting, distributing, and monetizing podcasts. So for ease of everyone's understanding, and because a lot of people over here are focused on video a lot, if you want to draw a parallel to us, YouTube would be the right place. Though there is a key difference, we are more B2B in nature. First we get the podcaster on the platform, then our model works on either getting the listens from their own captive audience or distributing content via third parties like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Savan, who's one of our partners, Jukebox from Book My Show, and so on. So we keep making these partnerships all the time, and it all leads to listens, and it's these listens that we try and then monetize by way of serving ads. So if you want to know more about us, we are also exhibitors at the event. Feel free to visit us. We'll probably have more details to share with you on how you as a publisher can get into podcasting and how we can help you with it. Just moving along. So what's the agenda for the day? So what are podcasts? Just a small description on that. Podcast market dynamics and trends. How is the market shaping up globally? How is it looking in India? So I have taken information from various studies that have come out. So what is the pie of the market, or the size of the market? What are the revenues looking like globally? This has come from a study that has been done by Interactive Advertising Bureau and PwC. Then there's a lot of details that we have on the US business and how podcasts are faring in the US. It's purely because US is a fairly evolved market when it comes to podcasting. Having said that, it's still a nascent market. And then we will move on to how the Indian market's looking today. Indian market is very, very small, and most of the data that we have is from Audioboom India. So, that'll give you a perspective of how that is shaping up. So if US is a nascent market, we are probably embryonic. I guess probably not even hatched today. So, we'll see how that market looks. And why, as publishers, should you be looking at podcasting? So I will try and convince people in this room, when I've, been here, we stand out as an oddity, as an exhibitor, because everywhere you go, it's video, and suddenly you come to Audioboom and you're like, what the hell is this? What is audio doing in today's video world? So I hope I'm able to convince you why it should be part of your strategy. And if I am able to convince you, I'd add what you need to focus on to be successful when you get started. And finally, is there a monetization opportunity and potential today, and of course in the future, for you to monetize your podcast? So I'll just get going. So what are podcasts? Now, if you Google podcasts, this is probably the first search that will come about. I think you guys can read what's written here. If I have to, describe podcasts, to me, it's on-demand digital radio. It's audio on demand. Just like you have video on demand, this is audio on demand. So you can consume the content on the go when you like, where you like, and you can consume what you want, as opposed to radio, which is linear in nature. And you have to listen to the songs that are being played, listen to the RJ, and maybe about just only 40 minutes of advertising within an hour. So that, that's something that podcast will, it helps you consume content that you probably have never consumed. And I'll deep dive a little more into what kind of content that could be. So how is the market looking? So firstly, I'm going to talk just a little about the global market. There's not too much data available at this stage, even for the global industry, but there's a lot of data available for the US industry. So we'll speak about that. And of course, whatever India data that you're going to see, it's going to be purely from Audioboom's perspective today. And these slides are going to be a little stats heavy, so bear with me. So what is the market size today? By end of 2018, it's projected that the US revenues are going to be about $402 million. By the end of the year, by end of 2020, it's going to end up being $659 million. Globally, this market is expected to be $1 billion. So that's about, if you convert that, it'll be about 7,000 crores. So the opportunity size today for the podcast market is about 7,000 crores. And we as a company, Audioboom as a company, aspires to at least capture 10% of this market, which to us, at least today, 700 crores is not a small amount of money. And it's not to say that after we reach $1 billion, the market's going to stop growing. It's growing at a fairly fast clip, and as more and more things come to the fore, you have Google getting into this business with Google Podcast that has just launched. You have smart speakers coming in. Your searches are going to be voice-led in the future. So this is the medium of the future, and I'll try to show you how. So how are people consuming content podcasts in the US? About 69% of people, in 2018, this is a survey, this has been done, this is an infinite dial study, which has been done by Triton and Edison Research. They are the four runners when it comes to researching about podcasts in the United States. And, this is what they found out, that 69% of people are consuming content, or podcasts rather, on a portable device. That could be a mobile phone. It potentially probably is mostly mobile phones. And if you look at the graph on the right hand side, it says that 18% of people now also own smart speakers. That could be Alexas and the Google Homes of the world. So, and this is only going to increase over time. And the other thing is 44% Americans have heard a podcast in 2018. Now that's a sharp climb from 2006 when it was 11%. So there's been a gradual increase, or rather a sharp increase, I'd say, over time. And this is now going to go at an even faster clip. How do people consume podcasts? Now, 49% of people consume podcasts at home. So this probably could be at, during their downtime when they probably just got home, or potentially, when they are about to leave for work in the morning, just a news bulletin that they could probably listen to before they leave, or probably when they're exercising in the morning. But a statistic that, I was actually startled by, and I felt this would have been far higher, is 22% people consume this in car, truck, that's what it says, and another 4% riding public transportation. I really wouldn't be surprised if this is the absolute opposite when India becomes a bigger market, wherein, we have longer commute times. I mean, personally, my colleague Umesh, who's here in the audience, he and I listen to a lot of audio content, audio books, podcasts, and I actually sometimes wait for traffic. I want traffic to be there so that I can actually finish a podcast or finish a chapter in an audio book. And it's a great way to, spend time, because you're listening to stuff that you want to listen to, rather than some radio jockey that you may not want to listen to, or music that you don't want to listen to. So it really helps. And what is also aiding this trend globally is that cars are getting smarter, the infotainment systems within cars are getting better, and that's a trend which will eventually come on to India also. It probably already is, but as the penetration of these systems increase, it's already about 15% in the United States. This will only, so these cars have Google Auto installed, they have Spotify installed, so I don't see why we cannot have Savan, Gaana and the likes installed. They probably already do that, but the penetration of these cars are going to increase over time. Such cars are going to increase over time. Engagement. Now, this is the key USP that podcast brings to the table. 80% of people that listen to podcasts in the United States end up listening to almost the entire episode. Now, the only place personally in India, being in the digital business for the last 10 years, that I have seen such high engagement rates is fantasy gaming. So, I've had the privilege of working on some fantasy games like Super Selector, some fantasy-based football games. Over there, people are so competitive that they want to, build a team, stay on top, beat their friends, beat others. They spend a lot of time creating a team and focusing on it. The only thing that I have seen beat that average time spent over there, it could be 15-20 minutes, is podcasts. I have never seen any other medium or any other part of digital giving this kind of engagement. Listening by age group, so most people are in the age group of 12 to 54, that's 62% in the United States. The stat for India is far interesting. So moving on to India, as I said, this is going to be all audioboom data. Everything from the previous slides was from infinite dial study. In India, what do we get? So as a company, on an average, we are getting about 1.5 million listens per month. I know it's puny. Probably some some YouTuber in India probably gets this in a day. But we are not discouraged by this fact because it's something that we believe is going to blossom and mushroom further. And to put this in context, just not to leave this number in a silo, Audioboom as a company globally gets about 60 million listens each month. Now, of the 60 million listens that we get each month, about 70% of those listens come in from the United States. This is followed by UK, then Australia, Canada, and this is where India is. Last month we ended at about 1.95 million listens. And again, to put this more in context, November 2016, that's when our financial year ends, we were at 50,000 listens. So we've almost seen a 40x growth, of course of a low base, but we've seen a 40x growth in our numbers over the last 2 years. And we don't see why this cannot keep going up. Even in India, the second stat is 48% completion rate up to 75% of content length. What we mean by this is 48% of our users end up listening to 7.5 minutes of a 10-minute content that is played. That's huge. And even with respect to people listening to almost 70% of the content, or rather almost half the content, we have 70% of our podcasters or listeners end up listening to half the content. So some other key stats that are worth mentioning: 89% of people are in the age group of 18 to 34. That's your millennial audience that you're effectively targeting. And this number is going to remain really, really strong even going forward. The other thing is the male-female ratio consuming this content. Now, don't get misled by this. If the podcast is run by women or you have women hosts, the listenership for women could be as high as 80% on such podcasts. So it really depends on the kind of content that is, who's creating it, what subject matter it's talking about. These numbers I just spoke about. How is it being consumed in India? Again, almost 79% people are consuming this on the go, on their mobile phones. 77% is mobile, 2% is tablets. I spoke about the age group, and the listens are coming from almost across the country. I have more details on which places in the country on this slide. So these are the top cities that are listening to content. But again, this is very, very sort of driven by the content partners we have. Red FM is one of our biggest content partners, and Delhi folks probably would be able to relate to this with Bawa being on air. He's the most heard guy on Audioboom today, and this is the reason Delhi is #1, followed by Kolkata is also the other reason. Probably there is a lot of people listening to a lot of Red FM content again. But again, this is a similar trend across podcasts. The cities may go up or down, but these are the major cities listening to podcasts today. Daily consumption. So we notice that consumption in mornings tend to spike. It's potentially, and this is the reason I said I find the stat that the US guys have very startling, that people are not consuming this while commuting. We have a strong hunch that these people consume podcasts. People in India consume podcasts while commuting in the morning. That's why the consumption is really high. It tapers down in the afternoon, and evening again it's high. And as the day comes to an end, it sort of moderates. This is probably your statistic of people consuming this at home when they're winding down. How's the weekly consumption? So we've noticed that the weekly consumption moves in a wave format. So it'll start on Monday, it'll go up, go up, go up. It'll hit its peak on Friday, start tapering on Saturday, and Sunday it just goes down. And it's the wave format that we keep seeing all through the week, month on month, year on year. And this is global. This is something that is a trend that we notice always. So why should you guys create podcasts? There are a bunch of publishers here, and I have been here since yesterday. As I said, all I have seen are companies trying to focus on video. Not once was podcast mentioned yesterday or audio mentioned yesterday. It was disheartening, but the fact is that here I have the opportunity to change your minds, so why should you do it? So you get to tap into an engaged audience. As I mentioned, the stickiness on this content is really, really high. You wouldn't get this anywhere else other than fantasy gaming, at least that in my personal opinion. So this is the number one thing. So the average time that you guys spend, the users spend on your site will go up tremendously if you add podcasts to it. We've had reports wherein our partners have said that the average time spent was about 7, 8 minutes on an average. That's bumped up to about 12, 13 minutes because of podcasts being added to their platform. So you may want to consider that. Theater of the mind. A personal example, I'm an Audible consumer. Recently they've launched originals and they've launched X-Files. Probably saw X-Files whenever in the 90s, early 2000s. Now I consume it in audio. And it stokes my imagination when you have those two detectives talking about what's happening. Imagine a child listening to a podcast, listening to a story, you probably are mothers, fathers, probably your grandfathers or grandmothers are being pestered by children to, read out a story. This solves that problem. It really stokes your imagination, probably just the next best thing to reading a book. Opportunity to capture the market today. Now, there is a dearth of podcasting content. You want to seize that opportunity today rather than do this 5 years down the line when everyone's scampering over each other to try and do this. This probably is, history repeats itself, and we see this repeating over here also. When Facebook, people started using Facebook for consuming content, Twitter for consuming content, there were many people late to the party. Here you're in this room, you have an opportunity to join the party today. Another touch point. To us, audio is the next natural progression when it comes to content consumption. People are consuming content in text for decades. They're consuming content in video now. They go to websites. So why not audio? This is another touch point. You have to have a play here because the topics can be really, really diverse. You can talk about astronomy for all you care, but there are people willing to listen to that kind of content. Break from the clutter. People are fighting each other in the video space. Here you have an open field. Go ahead and capture it. You're also breaking from the clutter. You're offering your audience something new and different, at least at this point in time, till this also becomes saturated like every other market. Stronger engagement, I've spoken about that. Low data costs. Audio file is 1/10 of the video file. And personally, I feel 4G is a sham in this country. I think they should just call it 2G because it never works. With low data consumption, potentially you always stay connected with your audience. Imagine they're traveling in the morning and they want to listen to the news bulletin or want to catch up the market news or the sports news. There's nothing better than this. Easy to track consumption. Just like everything digital, we can track consumption here. So everything is backed by data and analytics, so advertisers are also going to love you for this. So we believe sonic identity is a must, and why? So why should you enter this market today? So Jio has acquired Savan. From about 22 million active users, they're suddenly going to end up becoming 60 million plus active users. And the way Jio is going about capturing the market, don't be surprised if it ends up being 100 million active users in a couple of years. And they are one of our partners, and they push podcasts. Similarly, Spotify is going to enter in the market, and there will be other players also over time, trying to capture this lucrative market. Apple Podcasts, surprisingly, is one of the most, is the destination where people hear podcasts the most. 70% of our listens come through Apple Podcasts today. It's a very, very surprising statistic given that the penetration of these phones are very low. But the dark horse, and I call them dark horse today, actually they're not even the dark horse. If you have to quote Seb Blatter, he said India is a sleeping giant in football. Google Podcasts is a sleeping giant of podcasts. When they come into the market, when the penetration or when they start putting podcasts within Google phones, within Android phones, the game's going to change. Just to talk about the other stat that I have on this slide, 50% of all your searches are going to be voice-led, and we had the opportunity of meeting Google just a couple of days before, and they mentioned that this is a statistic that we picked from ComScore, and they backed this. They said this is something that's going to happen. In fact, 30% of your searches already are voice, and it's also the assistant. So, the Google Assistant plays on various devices. That could be your Google Home, it could be your phone, it could be your car. So those assistants are gonna, when you search in audio, your results are gonna be in audio. And if you're not there as a content creator, you're missing out on a very big opportunity that's gonna come about in a couple of years at most. And then there is, of course, the the smart speakers. So I mean, if you are at least convinced a bit on you should be doing podcasts, what are the genres that work? So the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about things that you potentially want to do to begin with to get some sort of traction. These are the genres that we've seen work. So entertainment, comedy, news, business, sports, spirituality. These are things that work. So as content creators, here's your cue to get started with the content that you should be. Distribution. The thing with podcasts is it's not something that you only want to keep on your own website. You want to distribute. Put it on Apple Podcasts. Ensure it's on Google Podcasts. Distribute the hell out of it. So that you basically, Audioboom as a company was a B2C company when we started. We've changed our tactics and become a B2B company simply because we want to take content to where people are already there. Give it to them on a platter. That's our philosophy, and we believe you should follow the same because that will lead to listens, and it means you capture a bigger market. These are some of the top Indian podcasts. This is not only Audioboom. So Red FM is one of our biggest podcasts. Network 18 Digital has taken a big leap of faith. Quint have taken a big leap of faith when it comes to podcasts. Then there are players like Savan who are spending crores on building a property like No Filter Neha. There is IndusVox Media that does Cyrus Says. So these are some of the shining lights today in podcasts. And apologies if I missed on anyone, but there are many, many more that are really trying well in this space. Indian Express has started 8 podcasts recently. What next? So you've created content, you've distributed content, you're in the game. Can we monetize it? I'm going to play a few samples. It also gives me a break to, for you to stop listening to me for a while. So there are 2 ads that I'm going to play. One is a pre-roll. Just like you have a video ad that plays before video content, I have a sample of an audio ad, which will be followed by something which is the most lucrative in the podcasting business. These ads are called as host reads. They are native to podcasts, and the host will mention about a brand. So let's just listen to them, and we'll speak about the advantages of going with audio ads.
Do you want to listen to a story? But just me telling a story may not be that much fun. Listen to thousands of stories and powerful voices and make your commute fun. All for just rupees $4.99 per month.
As a special listener, you can enjoy 30 days of free listening by signing up through storytel.in/30 days.
So the last cue, storytel.in/30 days, is the way you track it. Now, if people come onto that URL, that's your CTA. And the ad played the way it should. So Storytel as a company. If you didn't today, this is an audiobook company competing with the likes of Audibles in the world. And that was the CTA, the tracking mechanism put into an audio ad. Now, my personal favorite, you may just want to increase the volume on this one. It's a little low. This is my personal favorite. This is a sample. So go on, listen to it.
Hello, and this is a brand new episode of the Bollywood Podcast. मैं हूँ आपका host राम, और आज के एपिसोड में हम लोग बात करेंगे बहुत सारी चीजों के बारे में. Of course, we're going to talk about Bahubali. Apart from that, of course, we're going to talk about Salman Khan's Tubelight teaser, which is out. परिणीति चोपड़ा के बारे में, डेटिंग की काफी सारी खबरें मार्केट में हैं, उनके बारे में भी बात करेंगे. ठग्स ऑफ हिंदुस्तान की कास्टिंग के बारे में काफी न्यूज है. That's one on the agenda. And of course, जस्टिन वाले जो बीबर है हमारे इंडिया में आ रहे हैं, उनके बारे में भी बात करेंगे. लेकिन इतनी सारी खबरें सुनकर भी आपका पेट नहीं भरेगा, इसलिए तो हफ्ते के हफ्ते हम लोग एक और एपिसोड लेकर आते हैं आपके लिए बॉलीवुड पॉडकास्ट में. लेकिन अभी के अभी अगर भूख लगी है, पेट खाली होगा तो दिल कैसे खुश होगा? पेट भरने का और दिल खुश करने का एक ही तरीका है. zomato.com पे जाइए या फिर उनका ऐप डाउनलोड कीजिए. अमेजिंग ऐप, आई एम टेलिंग यू. Zomato इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट प्लेसेस टू ऑर्डर फूड. आप फूड ऑनलाइन ऑर्डर कर सकते हैं, वेरी सिंपल. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, इफ यू आर गोइंग आउट, lunch or dinner, well, you can book a table as well. And the best part is, जो भी रेस्टोरेंट आप चूज करना चाहते हैं, उसका सिर्फ मेन्यू या फिर उसकी प्राइसिंग नहीं पता चलेगी आपको. आप फोटोज देख सकते हैं, आप रिव्यूज चेकआउट कर सकते हैं, and then you can make an informed decision. The best thing in the world is Zomato is so reliable. Every time you book an order from Zomato, well, आपको पता चलेगा कि why this is the best place to order food. And guess what? Because Zomato helps the Bollywood podcast, हम लोग भी सोच रहे हैं कि Zomato को क्यों ना हेल्प किया जाए और साथ में आपकी भी थोड़ी पेट पूजा करवाई जाए. So what we're gonna do is basically, जब भी आप Zomato पर next time order करेंगे, आपको मिल सकता है 10% discount. What you need to do is throughout this month use this.
So I'll just move on. I hope there is somebody from Zomato here. You can approach us. We're just here. if you like the ad. And yes, there was nothing to watch. It was just audible. It's just audio. And the key thing here is the host spoke about Zomato for a minute. Today he's talking about getting a discount when you're ordering from Zomato. Tomorrow he can talk about, in the next episode, he can talk about subscribing to Zomato Gold. So imagine the kind of integration that happens into content, and you cannot even skip this. So if your edge case or use case rather is while driving, no way are you going to open your app, drag the slider. You probably end up missing content, so hard to skip. So product service can be explained in detail. That's the first advantage. So what does this kind of advertising bring to the table to the advertiser? The product can be explained in detail. It can be done across multiple shows and genres. Today we don't have scale, but in the US, some of our podcasters get 1 million listens each episode. And when you have that kind of scale and you are part of a certain genre or category, there is that potential to get actual fit for that particular podcast as an advertiser. It's delivered to loyal audiences. These hosts tend to have loyal following that they build over time. So if you probably have Neha Dhupia, she may already have a loyal following. But let's say you're just a normal podcaster, or somebody is probably a big fan of, Money Control when it comes to the finance news. If a host from Money Control is giving you that, you probably will believe him and try and latch on to what he's saying. Time limitation is less of a factor. That whole audio clip was about 2 minutes, that ad was about 1 minute. I don't think anyone offers that kind of advertising to advertisers in digital or on TV or anywhere. It's clutter-free. An hour-long podcast potentially may have about 2 ads. So that's the advantage. I'm running out of time, so I'm quickly going to take you through the remaining 2 slides. Host reads are native, you can't skip it. I mentioned that already. I spoke about the CTA, how it's integrated into it. And it's easy to do, as these episodes are being done either on a daily basis, weekly basis, fortnightly basis. So there's always inventory available for this. What are the other opportunities to monetize? And this is my last slide. You can license content. So if you're in the licensing game, create the content and license it. This is the other way other than advertising. If there are folks from agencies and advertising, from agencies that offer this as a service, you create videos, etc. Why not create audio? This could be a genuine source of revenue for you. And subscription, I think that says for itself. Put it behind a paywall and have your subscribers pay for it. Well, that's for me. That's me for today. Thanks for listening.